This video will show you how to complete the Consent tab of the Ethics Review system. The way in which you provide information to the participants depends on who will take part in your research, as some studies might not need explicit informed consent, for example when using existing datasets. If you are recruiting individuals to your study, ethics committees will expect to see the participant information sheet or leaflet that you plan to use. They will check it to see that it includes all the information that a potential participant might need to ensure valid consent. As a general rule, information should cover what a potential participant needs to know in order to give fully informed consent. You ought to cover the following information: who you are, the members of the research team and their contact details, what you are doing and why, the aims of the research, what's happening and what will be done with the research, and what the research involves, how participants have been identified and approached, what participation involves, including any risks, inconvenience or discomfort if appropriate, or any benefits. Be careful not to promise benefits if there are none. And what happens to the information they provide, including confidentiality and any limits on that. If the research is linked to a service that participants are receiving, for example teaching or social work, you need to reassure participants that the service they are receiving will in no way be affected whether they decide to take part in the study or not. If you are providing written information, then you should attach this to your application. If not, you should explain why this is not appropriate. Normally, consent is requested for a specific project only. However, it may be that your funders require you to archive your data and make it reusable. This approach would require careful management to ensure that participants' wishes are honoured. As a minimum, the following should be provided if planning to ask for generic consent: as much information as possible in plain language about future projects. In medical research, this could include, for instance, the types of diseases to be researched and how, as well as any details of any proposed linkages to other datasets or tissue collections. If identifiable information or samples will be stored and used in future research, then you will need to state exactly what the dataset will contain and how it will be used in publications. For example, if verbatim quotations are to be used, it would be useful to identify this to ensure you can demonstrate that you have secured this level of consent from participants. How privacy will be maintained, who will have access and the extent of the access, whether and how participants will be contacted for their consent for future research, that participants can withdraw from your study at any time and given options, such as the destruction of samples and removing links that can re-identify data, but told that any data that has already been shared anonymously cannot be retrieved. Whether data or tissue samples will be shared with collaborators and/or unknown third parties, and where, that is within the UK or abroad. Whether these will be commercial partners, and whether all future projects using the data and tissues will or will not be reviewed by a research ethics committee to safeguard the interests of participants. Please note that reusers of data have the same legal and ethical obligation to not disclose confidential information as primary users. Anonymization may be needed for ethical reasons to protect people's identities in research, for legal reasons to not disclose personal data, or for commercial reasons. Where secondary data includes personal identifiers, such as addresses, email or IP addresses, it is appropriate to remove these personal identifiers from the active dataset in order to protect confidentiality and anonymity. Personal data should never be disclosed from research information unless a respondent has given specific consent to do so, ideally in writing. Click the Information button to see whether your participants are classed as vulnerable. If they are, you need to explain how you will seek their consent and how their interests will be protected. If you're going to be conducting your research with children or in healthcare, you might need to undergo a criminal record check. This can be done online through the Disclosure and Barring Service. In general, covert research is discouraged, although it is recognised that covert designs are necessary in exceptional cases. One example might be an observational study in a public setting, and this could include online environments such as internet chat rooms, where it would not be feasible to reveal the nature of your research to everyone in the setting. If you are going to use covert research, you will need to justify its use adequately in your application. The applicant would also need to identify whether the covert nature of the research will be revealed to participants at any point. If it will be, then the details of when and how need to be provided. In considering whether covert methods are justifiable, it's useful to look at the ESRC guidance in the Framework for Research Ethics, which states, covert research may be undertaken when it may provide unique forms of evidence, or where overt observation might alter the phenomenon being studied. The broad principle should be that covert research must not be undertaken lightly or routinely. It is only justified if important issues are being addressed and if matters of social significance which cannot be uncovered in other ways are likely to be discovered. Privacy is the protection of personal information provided to the researcher, and confidentiality is a researcher's primary obligation. It means you must take reasonable precautions to protect confidential information obtained through or stored in any medium. Anything signed or noted on by the participants must be kept locked and secured. This often means retained files are kept in a locked filing cabinet or a password-protected file on a separate drive for up to 7 years after the study is concluded. Under this question, you will need to set out how you plan to protect the confidentiality and privacy of the information you have obtained. When designing research on sensitive topics, it's important to weigh the potential risks against the benefits and discuss the potential implications with colleagues or staff. Consideration should be given to whether the research findings might further stigmatise or marginalise the population under study. Asking such questions may cause distress or anxiety in the research participant. You, as a researcher, might learn things that you otherwise wouldn't and need to know whether and how such things might be reported. Here you must outline how you propose to mitigate the effects and deal with the potential outcomes of any discussion of sensitive topics, even if they arise inadvertently in the course of the research. If your research involves the use of the internet or other methods where respondents may be identified, you need to consider how to protect the confidentiality and privacy of the participants. This is particularly difficult when it comes to research over the internet. For example, what constitutes privacy in an online environment? How certain can you be that participants are who they say they are? A good source of information on ethics in online research is the Association of Internet Researchers 2002 guidelines. Where the research involves visual or vocal methods, how are you ensuring that confidentiality is maintained when participants or other individuals may be identifiable in the visual images used or generated? The use of payment as an incentive to participation can be seen as coercive and may exert undue influence over potential participants' decisions about whether to take part in the research. Of particular concern are participants from financially disadvantaged groups who may be more vulnerable to this type of coercion, and so their consent is not freely given if payment is involved. Another issue is that cash payments may be seen as income and therefore may have implications with regard to benefit payments or taxation, and so payment in vouchers may be preferable. You will need to justify why financial inducements are needed and the appropriateness of the level of inducements chosen. For more information about obtaining ethical approval for a research project, please see the ethics website at www.le.ac.uk/ethics. If you have any questions about the system, please email ethics@le.ac.uk.